Hello, everyone, and welcome to Level the Field Leadership. I am very, very excited to have you today. This is actually my first recording since our son was born. So it's a major victory for me on a personal level, but hopefully you'll get something out of the content as well instead of me just being thankful that I've got a little bit more motivation than I did before. My name is Rachel Gallardo. I'm very excited that you guys are here. And make sure that you do comment and you subscribe and things like that on all of the various platforms, wherever you happen to be listening to the sound of my voice. So that way you know whenever a new episode drops and you can kind of tune in and use that to your advantage. As many of you know, I created this podcast because I really do believe that it's important for us to level the field of challenges that we encounter in the work environment. And you never know when those are going to pop up, right? So I want to make sure that you've got some sort of tool chest that you can kind of dig into, and then whatever resource it is that you need, maybe there's an episode here that will help, something that one of the guests has said that'll inspire you to get you through whatever you're going through. Workplace burnout is very real, and so anything we can do to reduce burnout and fatigue in our leadership roles is going to have a positive impact on our team, positive impact on us, that spills over into our family. It's so just very, very important. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce our guest, Vanessa Mitera. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, and so happy that I got to be one of the firsts on this new chapter you're on. I'm
Right?
just so honored you made time for it. So I'm really excited to dive into what we're going to talk about today.
Awesome. Well, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you're currently doing, things of that nature?
Yeah, so I am the owner of Mitera Branding, and a lot of what I do is brand and market strategy. And what I found is there was such a need for more of a holistic approach within business rather than just segmenting, in one area of branding or focus. And so my clients were coming to me originally wanting branding photos done, and I could see that there were so many gaps and just a lack of clarity within their business. And so what I did with that is we built this holistic approach to everything we're doing. But what I saw is there was this huge gap in trying to input my values into what I was doing. And I saw that that was happening with a lot of people that I was working with. And so what I founded is a sub community of my business called Eden and Empire, which is a membership community that helps Christian women entrepreneurs build businesses that honor both who they are, their calling, their desires, their impacts, and really bridge that together because I feel like a lot of what business is really trying to separate that piece of it when I don't believe that's what we're called to do. So that's what I've been building for the past few years, and I've loved every piece of it. So,
Yeah, well, love might be a little bit of a stretch. I'm sure there were some days that you're like, why am I doing this again?
all the time. It's a
Yeah.
constant thing. So,
Well, just in talking to you and getting to know you and reading things about you, as the returning listeners know, I do like to base things around scripture. And so one that kind of spoke to me was Colossians 3:2. It says, set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. So my questions for you are going to kind of come from two different buckets. One, we're going to talk about the business side of it, but then you mentioned something to me whenever you and I first met about that kingdom mindset. So let's start with the business side first, because I'm very curious about some of those things. When we talk about sustainability, how do you make sure that your business is sustainable so that way it actually generates a profit?
yeah. So I think that a lot of times, so this question might be contradictory, but a lot of times when we go into business or even a certain industry or field, we're really looking towards the dollar amount. And what ends up happening is we're so driven by that, we kind of sacrifice so many of the things that we hold valuable to us, whether that's our mental health, our family. And so a lot of times what ends up happening is we can grow a business that's on paper really great, but then what ends up happening is that everything else is sacrificed.
Mm,
And one of the things that, and this kind of ties into the kingdom impact aspect of it, but sustainability to me, of course, is running a business that allows, or, being in an industry that allows you the ability to provide for your family. But what that looks like can be so different for everyone. And I feel like as I think that God called us to more than just one thing. Like we're not single purposed individuals. And so to me, sustainability doesn't necessarily mean that you are, running this great business on paper and hitting a certain dollar amount, but it also means incorporating, time with your family and prioritizing them, and then time within your faith and prioritizing that. So to me, it kind of works like this ecosystem that allows us the capacity to really just have time for the things that we value more than anything. And so to me, it's not necessarily a number in the bank, like in my bank account. It's more, what does that allow me to do?
Mm. And that's so good because there are things that we strive for that can be gone in an instant.
Mhm.
And the same thing is true for those people that we say that we love, but yet then we don't make time for them. Like
Yeah.
anything could happen, car wrecks happen, heart attacks happen, things like that. And so you don't want to have any sort of regret for
Right.
putting too much time in one basket or another.
Right.
And I think sometimes women in particular, they feel very torn with that more so. Not to say
Mhm.
that guys don't. So fellas, I'm not picking on you guys, but I know that women sometimes they can feel guilty if they're at work. They feel guilty because they're not at home, but then when they're at home, they feel guilty because they're not doing stuff for work. How do
Absolutely.
you help leaders that are kind of struggling with that mindset?
I think because I've lived it, I know that tension that you're feeling so deeply. And so for myself, it comes from, advice that I've implemented on my own, which one of the things is I used to work in corporate, so I used to work a 9 to 5, and then I would it wasn't technically 9 to 5, but essentially.
Sure.
And then, and for so many years, I worked from home as I did that. And there was COVID. And so my son was home, and I had so much firsthand experience with that guilt. And I was always trying to juggle, okay, I have to meet these deadlines. I have to do it with like world-class quality. And then I also have to like mother my child. And so that gave me a lot of experience in that end of things. But I think that what I learned along the way, whether it was in corporate or being full time in business, is that whatever I'm doing, I try to give it 100%. So when I'm with my kids, I give them 100%. I'm not like answering emails while I'm with them, unless we're just like mindlessly, we have downtime, we're mindlessly scrolling. But, and then when I'm in my business, I try to be as much in my business. And so that kind of gives me a little bit of, I want to say like grace, or just allowing myself that ability to say, I gave you 100% of my time and my attention. And now I'm going to move on to this because I have an identity outside of being a mom, outside of being a wife, and that's okay. And I think it's important that we have those things.
Hmm.
But if we're always trying to, I mean, they say like don't multitask, right? Like it's so it's so hard to do. And I think that holds true. Like if you are trying to, I did it. I tried to work my business and be a stay-at-home mom, and it just wasn't. I had so much stress. I was trying to answer client calls, and I had a baby and a 3 or 4 year old, running around playing, and it just wasn't, I wasn't the version that I wanted to be. So I would say it's never going to be a perfect balance, but you just give 100% in the areas that you can when you can.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so good. And I like the latter part of that sentence was when you can. Sometimes your 100% might be a 50% of your, what you're really capable of doing. But if that's really all you have to give on that day, then that's all you have to give, and it is what it is.
Exactly.
Um, and in a lot of ways, we try to look at long-term impact versus short-term impact. So can you share about a time where you prioritize maybe a long-term impact? Like, I know that there's this other stuff going on, but I need to focus on this one thing because long-term, this is going to benefit me more than this short-term item.
Yes. So a lot of what I did in the early stages of building Eden and Empire was so because it's a sub community of my main business, I still had so much of my client work that's, the bread and butter of my business. And what I found is, as much as I enjoyed doing what I was doing with my clients, I still had this feeling on the side where I was like, you need to build this, you need to build this. Like, this is going to be your thing, but all my attention was going here. And what I heard and felt so clearly is you have to let go of the money that you're making.
Mhm.
Take only what you need and put your focus here. And so I knew that I was going to be able, because it's a community, right? So the amount of people that I can impact with the community versus the high ticket, client work one on one, it can make an impact, but it's in a different way. And I can still do those things. So for myself, that was probably one of the biggest times when I could look at it and say, I have to let go of the dollar amount and really just focus on that. And it was a little hard. It's hard saying bye to clients. It's hard getting out of that mindset of, when you're building a business, that's what you want, right? You want clients
Right.
coming in and the work sustainable. And so
Right.
having that be where it's like, okay, if these clients are gone, like where is it going to come from or what does that look like? And so it's still something that, as I'm building, it's something that I have to try to say like, okay, don't take anybody on, like you're okay right now. So,
Right. Right. Well, in my own experience, I have found that whenever I should have been doing something and I decided not to, that somehow just found a way that I ended up doing that thing I was supposed to do. So, I
yes.
mean, I get it. I also took a major pay cut to change careers. There
Mhm.
was a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of just fear and not knowing. And,
Right.
but in my case, I didn't go wholeheartedly. I like little by little moved my way over. And so,
Yeah.
whenever one company goes bankrupt and then you get fired from another company, it's like, okay, I guess I need to go and do this other thing full force because I don't know what's going to happen if I don't.
Yes,
So,
exactly. I mean, and it happens. I think a lot of times people, when they start a business, they're like, oh my gosh, you don't know what's going to happen. What if it doesn't work out? And I've experienced it with corporate. I mean, thankfully, I wasn't part of it, but they went through massive transitions and layoffs, and it happens so many times. So it's like there's never a guarantee in either
yeah.
industry. So,
Exactly. And I think we like to tell ourselves that, like, oh, I have this comfortable position
yeah,
and I've got benefits and I know where my next paycheck is going to come from. But especially me, I mean, I live in Texas and Texas is employment at will.
yeah,
So you never really know. There is no guarantee in
yeah,
life about
yeah,
anything, except
exactly.
for eventually we all have a death date, but that's kind of morbid. So, anyways.
Yes.
So tell me, when it comes to building this business and being the leader for these individuals that you're coaching or you're mentoring, I'm not sure what the proper term for that would be, but how do you help them build resiliency during times when there is uncertainty? Because I think sometimes we have this false sense of security, and really we should have uncertainty all the time.
Yeah.
So how do you help people have more resilience? What's your advice to them?
I think that the biggest thing that I do really stemmed from the whole reason why the community was created. And so first of all, we want to honor and glorify God in everything that we're doing as business owners within if you're kingdom minded, of course. And so the biggest thing is going back to scripture and saying, you know what, God has called you to this, and so he'll see you through, and being very strong in those reminders. And so when you have a great knowledge of what scripture actually says, I think it eases so much of that fear and anxiety, and knowing that even though the bad things may come, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to be worked out for your good. And it's not that we are meant to fear it. It's that we need to be equipped when, those situations come, and you have to have the right mindset. And I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter at any point in time. There's always going to be fear over, you could be scared of any aspect of anything. And so just being really grounded in what scripture says, and applying that to business and your family, and just knowing, that ultimately there's something better in store, even
Mm-hmm.
if the bad does end up happening. So,
Yeah, yeah. And there's such a value in the quote unquote bad as well,
mhm.
because there's so much opportunity for learning and growth too. Um,
Yeah.
and you never know when you're going to need that for something else that might be coming up. So it's kind of
Yeah.
like you're being primed for that next thing 5 years from now, 10 years from now that might happen.
Yeah.
Or it could be something that happens to you that you had no clue is now going to help somebody else.
Yeah.
Somebody could come to you and tell you their story, and you'd be like, you know what, I was in that exact same situation 2 years ago. Let me tell you what I did and how it worked out for me. And so we shouldn't be so quick to kind of push those things away.
Yeah. I almost, I know it sounds crazy, but I almost, in a sense, like kind of embrace it because I know there's something that's going to come heavily from it. Based on
Right.
my own experience, there's just so many times where, of course, it didn't feel great in the moment, but,
Yeah.
when you can kind of see that later on, it's like, okay, this makes so much more sense why I went through this.
Right. Right. So you mentioned kingdom values. How do you measure success in a way that reflects sustainability, but then also reflects kingdom values as well?
Yeah, so kind of going back on to what I mentioned earlier, I think what ends up happening when we're so driven by just the dollar amount versus a people mentality is we're so driven by what the world tells us we need to do. And a lot of times that's hustle harder, go farther, self-help, all of these things. And that's not, I don't believe that that's what business or leadership was ever intended to be. When you have a people first mentality, so much of what you do just kind of flows effortlessly. And then I think it just, I've seen and coached so many women where they built these businesses that were incredible businesses. And then at the end of the day, they were like, what did I build? I don't love it to the same extent. And it was never about the money in the bank. It was more about what were you doing? Who are you impacting? And I think those things end up hitting home more because it's coming from a different place. And so to
Mhm.
me, sustainability in that means it's this ecosystem. So this is what Eden and Empire is really based on is the fact that you don't have to sacrifice what's sacred to you as you build something of significance. And so what that essentially means is I believe that God really did want us or does want us to build businesses that honor our faith, our family, and we can do it in a way that doesn't allow us to be burned out. Our cups are filled and we can really recognize like, what is God? Is God the one calling me to do this or is the world calling me to do this? Like we can view it from a different lens. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that we can actually recognize a lot more times when we're getting burned out or things are not sustainable when we take it from that approach versus the hustle harder mentality, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
what's so it can be great in times, right? Like we need to have a lot more output in certain areas, but being aware of when it just doesn't serve us.
Sure. Sure. Now, when you talk about this people first mindset, can you give an example of how you implement this on a regular basis, or what do you do to make sure that you keep that mindset? Because it's so easy for us to kind of deviate from that, and we get frustrated, or we're tired, or hungry, or whatever. So, how do you always rejuvenate that people first mindset from a
Yeah.
leadership standpoint?
Yeah, so it doesn't always, it's not as linear as I would like it to be. Sometimes it wavers, but I think one of the biggest things is that I probably give more of myself at for the ability to serve other people. So a lot of times offers that probably, well, in the coaching world. So a lot of times offers that would be a high ticket or a certain dollar amount. My mentality is like, how can I serve you? Like, I just want to make sure that you're getting what you need. I want you to trust me, and then everything else will come later. So a lot of what I do is based on I want to make sure this is valuable to you and really works for you. And then when it comes to the work that I do with women, I don't know, it's so different when you look at people as people and not a dollar amount and seeing them as like, okay, if that means that I build stronger and it takes me longer, that's totally okay. I have to be it was a hard mindset shift too, because we're in a world that's so driven by numbers and like vanity metrics and
Mm,
seeing, on social media, like, oh my gosh, do you have X amount of followers or are you, converting this amount of people or all of these different things. And it's like, okay,
right,
how are you actually helping people? If you can
right.
help one really well versus 1,000, okay. To me, that's more of my focus. So it just takes a little bit more time.
Sure, sure. So have you ever faced a situation where doing the right thing for somebody for a purpose, it came at a cost? And I don't mean like a dollar amount necessarily, but you were in that element of servant leadership and you realized just how much it was costing you in that moment?
Yeah, I think a lot of times early on in my business, and it's not necessarily the dollar amount, but sometimes when you have that mentality of like, I'll give and give and give, it can be at the cost of your own mental health because your
Mhm.
workload is too much. You're taking on too many things. And, while I am such a people first, I have that mentality. I am still in the mentality of like you should there's value in what you do. And so you should be paid for that accordingly. And so a lot of times when we first start businesses, we just want to give, give, give. And that's at the sake of our own, time, energy, time away from families, all of those things. So I think that's another piece of where that burnout and, all of that came from is giving too much. So there's like there's not a balance, but there's, this gauge I think that we kind of have and we're aware of. Sometimes we push it away. So for
Mhm.
me, it was giving too much really early on and not being aware of my own boundaries.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think sometimes too we give so much of ourselves early on. Um, that we forget that it doesn't have to happen overnight. We think that the more that I do this now, then I'll get up to that level of where I want to be, and then I can kind of coast from there. And that's not really how it works. Now, granted, you'll have some opportunities that will just kind of blow up and this huge opportunity will come along. But for most of us, it's that day in, day out, daily grind of doing the same thing over and over and over again that
Yep.
eventually get you to what your goal is that you're trying to accomplish.
Yep. Exactly.
So I know that there are people like I can hear the naysayers kind of in my head right now. That's like, okay, this is all well and good, but that it's not really applicable to the quote unquote real world. Like, because there's a lot of cutthroat individuals out there. You know, if you watch some TV shows that have any kind of business component to it, everybody's trying to backstab each other and things like that. So, what advice would you give to somebody that's listening right now, which everybody listening is a leader? We talk about that immensely. Um, but what advice do you give to these individuals that are trying to build a business or to lead a team that's going to honor God while also thriving in this kind of dog eat dog world that we're forced to be in?
So I have such a community over competition mindset. I have had that, and maybe it stems from where I am locally here in Omaha. That there's so many, and especially with women, because I feel like a lot of times women, and it's not to say that there are not women that are not, catty or, have drama, but it's such an empowering. So I lead a community. It's one of Omaha's largest communities for business owners. And within that, I just see the collaboration. So maybe my mentality might be a little bit biased or jaded, but I really think that if you approach business as yeah, I've had people that I've worked with that have taken clients, that have been in that mindset of like, okay, I'm going to go after what she has. And that's, I feel like there's room to go around. Those people were never meant for me. Same thing
Yeah.
with other business colleagues or business professionals within certain connections or networks. I feel
Or maybe
like,
they were supposed to be there like for a season, right?
yes,
And
exactly.
your season came to an end and it's time for another season.
Yes. And I think for me, in those times that's happened, or I've had a client that, the terms of us offloading or, ending didn't necessarily work out how they wanted to, so they were upset. It's never roses, right? Like it's not all perfect all the time, but I think there's something to be learned in that. I'm a forever student, so I'm always trying to take in like what could this mean or like how could I use that? And anytime things like that have happened, it's allowed me to tighten up my contracts. It's allowed me to charge a higher dollar amount. It's allowed me to recognize like these are not my people and be aware of how much I give. It's just taught me so many different things. So I think it would be very naive to think that like even though what we put on social media looks like a highlight reel, there are other things that are going on behind the scenes and it can be tough to navigate. But I think it's all about the mentality that you have. If you approach it with the mentality of I'm going to help. Like, I have a friend who is starting a community that's almost identical to what I'm doing. And I don't see it as, oh my gosh, she's going to come in and steal all my people. I'm like, how can I help you? Because no matter what, those people are going to be drawn to you because you have your own unique set of talents, skills, life experience, all of these different things that I won't ever possess or be able to help people in that way. And so I would rather them gravitate to you versus me because they were never meant for me.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
that's kind of how I navigate it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would imagine that having that mindset, it makes you less likely to feel that fatigue, to feel that burnout that comes with being a leader, starting a business, trying to
Right.
accomplish whatever it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. I think it's just that mental load sometimes that we carry if it's always negative and
Yeah.
people are always out to get you, it can be really
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of what business and leadership is what you believe it is,
Mm.
to some degree. So I think if you're always thinking that, you can't collaborate with people, you're missing out on something really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, and even those people with difficult personalities, there's always
Mhm.
something to learn. It
Yeah.
might take a little bit longer for you to connect with them, and it might be a little bit longer for you to find whatever it is the two of you are connected with. But
Yes.
there there is value in being able to work with somebody that everybody else is like, oh gosh, you're with that person. It's like, well, yeah, we get along fine.
Yeah.
Because I've actually had that happen, and people have looked at me like I've got three heads when I said I was able to get along with a certain individual.
Yes.
Like, well, no, I mean, I took time and I
Yeah.
found something that we could connect with, and then you just kind of build on it from there.
Right. Exactly. I've definitely had those. I have that in my family. So
Yeah, we don't, that's a whole nother podcast.
yes.
So, well, here's where we get to the point where I call it the shameless plug. So 2 minutes, I mean, three, no, you're not on the timer or anything, but if there's anything that you want to share with the audience, anything that you want to, guide them to, I mean, now the floor is open for you.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times within leadership or, owning your own business, whatever stage you're at, there are so many different times where you're so unclear because there's no blueprint. There's no, somebody hands you and says, this is exactly how you need to work, to achieve this, or there's no framework for you as a business owner. It's just there's so much lack of clarity. And I think that for myself, there's been so many times where I have to sit back and just ask the questions. And a lot of times they lead to bigger questions. But
Mm.
I think reframing my mindset and being really clear on what it is that I'm guided to do has been so instrumental in all of the decisions that I've made within my business. And so one of the things that I felt really called to do was create this guide that really it's not necessarily a guide, but it's called Quiet Questions for Big Decisions. And so essentially it's this, I'll just call it a guide just for lack of better words. But it's a series of, like, I think there's 44 questions in there, and they apply
Oh, wow.
to parenting, they apply to leadership, they apply to faith and scripture and business and everything. And so they're really short questions, but I felt like they were so impactful. And they're questions that I found myself asking other women as well. And so the guide is free, of course, but I just offer that because I feel like it can be really lonely. And a lot of times we don't know the right questions, not that they're right, but the questions to ask to
Right.
help us get into a different mindset. So
Yeah.
that would
And
be my
and
shameless plug.
and where can people find this not a guide?
I so need to like name it for sure, like specify what it is. But it's a PDF download. So
Okay.
but it's on my website, materabranding.com, or anywhere on my social. I'm Mitera Branding or just Vanessa Mitera. And I can send it as well, but my website is probably the best option. So
Okay. Well, I'm going to put all of your social media information and website and everything else in the show notes. So if you're listening, feel free to go check that out. You should be able to click on it, get and access whatever you're trying to access. Feel free to connect with Vanessa if you want to join this community. And even if you just need it for some sort of encouragement. I mean, Vanessa, each time that you and I talk, I just have this immense amount of peace that comes over me. So
Oh, thank
I don't
you.
know if anybody else feels that, but I know if I need that shot of peace, I'm just going to come back to this episode and listen. Listen
Thank
to
you.
it.
That means so much. Thank you.
So, but if you are listening and you did like what you heard, I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button to receive new content. Now that I'm back in my fold and back in, we're trying to get back into my routine. I don't want to say it's 100% at this point. There will be new episodes on the second and the fourth Tuesday of the month, and so just little nuggets to kind of keep you encouraged and inspired. Leadership can be challenging, and every day is a little bit different, and so I do hope that the information that you heard on this episode will help you and share it with other people. Follow me on Instagram. There's so much negativity that's out there. So if you need something that's a little more encouraging throughout your day, follow Vanessa, follow me. You'll get a little pick me up along the way. So Vanessa, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you and welcome back.
Thanks, thanks. And for everybody listening, remember you are made to be a leader right where you are, wherever you're leading. The things that we talked about today can help you develop the roots of your leadership so you can weather any storm. Take care of yourself, take care of your team. You can 1000% do this. And until next time.